in that I'm going to talk about Israel, but I'm not exactly going to talk about the strategic heights and the lows. I'm going to talk about something a little bit more fundamental, and I've got 20 minutes, so I'm going to be very, very short. Now, can I have that one postcard back? Thank you. Okay, thank you. So, the two things I'm going to talk about, which I hope you're going to walk out with a lot better understanding, is the one glob of things I'm going to talk about is Israel hate and Jew hate, and how this map and what I'm handed out is really a rather robust defense to Jew hate and Israel hate. That's sort of the one issue. The other issue, which is sort of on everyone's mind, and it's topical, is President Trump's peace plan, deal of the century. Hopefully after you walk out, you'll understand really what's going on with what he or what many Israelis see as a vision. Whether it makes sense or not, it's up for you guys. But let's really talk about the Israel hate, Jew hate issue. Now, about 9 years ago, just to give you a little background, about 35 years ago, I came up with this map, and I've been going to congressmen, senators, and anybody who listened to me to explain Israel. So, in that process, I've learned a lot about not what I want to explain to congressmen and senators about Israel, but what they want to understand about Israel. And I'll tell you a little anecdote that happened to me. About 9 years ago, I walk in, I got a meeting from a friend to go to then Paul Ryan's office. Before he was a vice presidential candidate, before he was Speaker of the House, he was the head honcho on the budget. So I walk into his office, I plop down my map, the woman is sitting there, she looks at me, she looks at the map, she says, okay, I'm going to make it simple. The only thing Congressman Ryan cares about is the budget. He runs a very tight ship. I'm his only staffer on foreign affairs. I know nothing about Israel, the Middle East. You have 15 minutes, go. And I look at her. And I say, okay, you only care about the budget. And she nods, yes. It's the only thing she cares about. So I look at her then, and I say, so what you're really telling me is you want me to prove to you in 15 minutes that Israel is worth more alive than $3 billion a year. And she gently nods. And I said, come on, that's not fair. And she now is looking at me quizzical. What are you talking about that it's not fair? I say, come on, everybody knows it's not $3 billion. Everybody knows it's the $18 billion for the whole foreign aid budget. Because how AIPAC and the Jews go up to Capitol Hill is they say, oh, I don't care about myself. I really care about the whole world. Pass this $18 billion line item. Of course, $3 billion is in Israel. And she looks at me and she says, are you here for Israel? And I say, yeah, I'm here for Israel. I just want a fair fight. And she sort of gently nods, yes, the hurdle is $18 billion. Okay. Now, with that, I'd like everybody to look at what I handed out, the postcard if you want. And so I look at her, and I pull out an earlier version of this map, and I say, okay, my dear, look at the blue line in the if you look in the upper left-hand corner, there's a blue line, blue dotted line. Everybody got that blue dotted line? Everybody got it? Okay. Now I say to her something very simple. I say, in this upper left-hand corner, you've got a country called Greece. Greece is a predominantly Christian country. that has, believe it or not, only 11 million people. And it's also pretty much bankrupt. But the key aspect is Greece is a NATO country. And it is, in fact, the southeastern part of Europe and NATO. And so I say to her, okay, how are you going to defend, so on the rest of this postcard, excluding Pakistan, Nigeria, India, Malaysia, which is another billion Muslims. I'm just talking this postcard, just on this postcard. There is 487 million Muslims in various states of being failed states, meaning Libya, Egypt. Who the heck knows what's going to happen to Egypt tomorrow? Syria, hello. Sudan, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Iraq. Taken in total, that's 487 million Muslims. So I asked her a very simple question. Without Israel, what's the only non-Muslim country between the 487 million Muslims and the 11 million Christians of Greece that we're sworn to defend under NATO? The answer is Israel. So when I said to her, okay, without Israel, how much are you, Mrs. Budget, going to have to put in years 2, 3, 4, and 5 to pay for a defense of Greece, which is a NATO country, against any of the threats which would likely emanate from this 487 million Muslims? She looks at me and she says, you just bought yourself another 15 minutes. At which point, I started to go over the map with her. But let me tell you how what I just explained is really at the core of what is predominantly the anti-Israel, anti-Jew hate, Israel hate in America today. And if I can, I'd like everybody to, the booklet I gave you, to open it up to the second page. Now, I'm going to tell you a little bit of history, which is Israel was created in 1948. So we will all admit that in 1941, there was no Israel. Will we all agree on that one? Okay. Thank you for whoever seconded me on that one. So, anyway, in 1941, what we were dealing with was, this is 1941, not December 1941 when Pearl Harbor happened. We're talking 1941, where Hitler is bombing the hell out of London, killing all of these civilians. And America is not yet in World War II on the side of Britain and the Allies. And there was a huge tumult and fight in America as to whether America should go in or stay out. And one of the leading proponents of staying out was Charles Lindbergh. Okay? Now, I'm going to read to you what Charles Lindbergh said when there was no Israel. Okay? In 1941, September 1941, this is about 3 or 4 months before Pearl Harbor. And this was this was not televised. It was a radio speech over the entire United States. The 3 most important groups who have been pressuring this country towards war with the British are the British, the Jewish, and the Roosevelt administration. The second major group I mentioned is the Jewish. Their greatest danger to this country lies in their large ownership and influence in our motion pictures, our press, our radio, and our government. I am not attacking the Jewish people, but I am saying that the leaders of the Jewish race, for reasons which are understandable from their viewpoint, as they are inadvisable from ours, for reasons that are not American, wish to involve us in this war. We cannot blame them for looking out for what they believe to be their own interests, but we must also look out for ours. We cannot allow the natural passions and prejudices of other peoples to lead our country to destruction. Now, everybody, this happened in 1941, but I posit, if you look at what I'm going to call the right, and I don't mean to be pejorative when I say right-wing or left-wing. If you look at Rand Paul, for instance, the libertarian right-wing of the Republican Party, that is exactly his argument about why we shouldn't be supporting Israel. And I'm going to read it again, but this time I'm going to, instead of supporting Britain, I'm going to say supporting Israel. The most important groups who are pressing this country towards supporting Israel are the Jewish. The Jews' greatest danger to this country lies in their large ownership and influence of the motion picture, press, and radio. I'm not attacking the Jewish people, but I am saying that the leaders of the Jewish race, for reasons which are understandable from their point, as it is inadvisable from ours, for reasons that are not American, wish to involve us in this war for Israel. We cannot blame them for looking out for what they believe to be their own interests, but we must also look out for ours. We cannot allow the natural passions and prejudices of other people lead our country to destruction. Now, everybody, who here has not heard that the cause of instability in the Middle East is Israel? Okay? Everybody, that in its core is what I just read to you. And that in its core is what we are dealing with on one side of the aisle. Now, on the other side of the aisle, she's a lot more pithy and succinct. Ilhan Omar. It's all about the Benjamins. Okay? Now, what does that mean? That means, quite frankly, that, and I don't mean to be pejorative about AIPAC, but what does AIPAC sell itself as? Oh, we need AIPAC to explain and to, we're a PAC, so we support these candidates. Well, unfortunately, that is almost the exact argument of Ilhan Omar. Except what Ilhan Omar is saying, she's saying something more. She's saying it's all about the Benjamins, which means what? Well, Jews, but it's all about the fact money, okay? And what the Jews in this country are doing is it's all about Jews paying off congressmen and senators to support Israel, which really means that's it. There is no other reason. Well, everybody, and what we are, when you really take what she is saying and you read what she's saying, is almost criminals in a way, in that she's saying we're engaged in this conspiracy to buy off congressmen that is really in the detriment and it's in the worst strategic interests of the United States. That's essentially what she's saying, okay? Now, everybody, the key here is with this little map, we turn that argument totally around. How do we turn it around? We turn it around by saying, listen, let's just have, the Ilhan Omars, the Rashida Tlaibs of the world, they're not talking about a two-state solution, as the rabbi said. They're talking about the zero-state solution. So let's just jump right over it. Let's go there. And when you go there, all of a sudden, you are confronted with an ugly reality that Israel is the first and last line of defense for the United States and NATO and Western civilization against God only knows what would come out of this 487 million Muslims. Now, I have 20 minutes, so I'm going to segue to the second issue. And on the second issue, I'm going to bring up my map. Okay. And the second issue I talked to you about was President Trump's plan. Now, I challenge anyone to look at those maps and understand what the heck is going on. Okay? It's impossible. And to tell you how impossible it is, a week and a half ago, two Israelis came to my apartment. One had been in the IDF, and the other was an executive director of a synagogue down in Aventura. And they said to me, Mark, can you explain to me what this plan is? And I said, sure. And they said, no one knows what this plan is. I asked this, I asked that, no one knows what the plan is. And these are Israelis, one of which was in the IDF. So now I'm going to explain to you what the plan is. When you go to Israel, by the way, my tonsils are dusty, as my mom makes you best. Do you have a little water? Thank you. Okay, so the concept is the plan. Now, if you've ever gone to Israel, you always hear, oh, there's a plan. It's a strategic plan, and it was thought out, and we know what parts we want to keep and what parts we want to give away. Okay? Now, any normal, rational person thinking about that, oh, we want to keep, you sort of imagine, oh, we want to keep half and give up half or something like that. Okay? And everyone thinks tug of war. I keep half, give up half. Thank you so much, Rabbi. God bless you. So, now I'm going to give you a very short tour of my map. So, and I'll tell you a little story in the process. So this is about 28 years ago. I schlepped my map to the New York Times editorial board, and I plopped the map down. And you got all of these editors who write the anonymous editorials of the all-knowing New York Times editorial board there. And I popped down, and one of the editors, who of course was the Jewish editor, not the Goyish editor, the Jewish editor, goes and points to right over this little green area over here and starts laughing at me. I haven't even opened my mouth yet. And I say to him, what are you laughing at? He says, you're a joke. And I said, I'm a joke. What are you talking about? He says, this map's a joke. I said, okay. What do you mean? He says, you're never going to be able to prove to me that this West Bank is strategically important for Israel. And I look at him, and I look at the Goyish editors, and I say, you're absolutely right. I'm never, ever going to be able to prove to you that this West Bank is strategically important for Israel. And he seemed satisfied. And I said, because that is not the West Bank we know and love to fight about. It's not this little green area that you see over here, because what's the West Bank? The West Bank is you got the Jordan River, and this is the West Bank of the Jordan River. Everyone get that one? Okay? The West Bank is actually not this little green thing here. It's in fact this whole mountain range that goes to the blue, back up to Jerusalem, and then back down here. This is a mountain. This whole area is the quote-unquote West Bank. And these are the mountains that overlook the 9 narrow mile strip that the rabbi talked about. Now, in this blue rectangle, you've got, the blue rectangle is about 10 miles wide by 40 miles up and down. And that has got 70 to 80% of Israel's entire Jewish population. Okay? So what you're talking about in the West Bank state is this huge tract sitting right atop 5 million Jews. Now, I'm not going to really talk about that for this talk, but I'm going to show you something else. When you look at this map, and you sort of look at it on a cross-section, like this way, you see from the Jordan River to what is the watershed crest line or spine of the West Bank. And then from the spine of the West Bank to what is the Green Line. There's a steep upgrade and there's a gentle upgrade. And if everyone could just imagine looking at this from the Jordan River to the crest line, it's very steep. From the crest line to the Green Line, it's very shallow. Now everybody should be saying, why is he showing me this? Okay? And the reason is extremely simple. Nobody, but nobody would, in this steep area, ever want to live or build homes. So what happens is when Israel in 1967 occupies the West Bank, no one's living here, including the Palestinians. There are no Palestinians, virtually no Palestinians, in this area which is called the Jordan Valley. Almost all the Palestinians live in the western part of the West Bank. So now, this is what happens. Israel takes this area over. 1967, at the time there was a labor government. And there's a labor general. And this labor general says, oh, I've got a great idea. I've got a great idea. And for this, I want everyone to turn to page 11 of my book. So this Israeli general in 1967 says, I've got an idea. Now let me tell you how I came upon this map. So many, many years ago, I come upon this map. And I see this vertical line, you know, the red, where the red and the brown, there's this line that's going north and south. I say, oh my God, I understand something. I understand this guy's plan. That line that you see on that map in the upper left, that's the crest line of the West Bank. Oh, I get it. This Israeli general wants to keep the western part and give up the part that's furthest away, like everyone else would think here. That's what I thought, until I started reading the guy's plan. And actually, his plan was the exact opposite. It was to keep the part that's furthest away and to give back the area that's closest to Israel. This whole map thing was a learning process for me. And the concept behind it was, oh, we don't want to rule over these Palestinians, but at the same time, we want to keep this area that's very strategically important, because very few if you control this area, you really can't be attacked by tanks. Okay? So he thought he came up with this plan. However, as the rabbi said, what has been going on, unfortunately, is even in the Gaza Strip, I have this little plexiglass piece, which is the range of a Katyusha rocket, which is those one-off types of things. So they fire them now from the Gaza Strip into this area. But as I sort of impliedly told you a little bit before, this is where all the population is. Around the Gaza Strip, there's almost all farmland. So it's like firing one of these mortars into, I don't know, North Dakota. I hope nobody's here from North Dakota. As opposed to if you were able to smuggle these little things in and fire them into this area from the West Bank, it's like firing from Brooklyn into Manhattan. So that was before. So this plan was really created before any of these firings of Katyusha rockets or anything like that. But and then I'll wrap this up. The problem with this plan that this Israeli general came up with was when Israel took over the West Bank in 1967, what happened was the president at that time, Lyndon Johnson, didn't know what to do with the situation. So he asked the Pentagon, listen, Israel just took over this land. Can you please write me a report and tell me what it should keep and what it shouldn't keep? Everybody with me? So this is not my opinion. This is the Joint Chiefs of Staff of the United States' opinion. So if you look at the bottom of that page, again, in the bottom right, you see the Joint Chiefs of Staff map. And their map, again, has this line. But the Joint Chiefs of Staff map is exactly the opposite of Alon's map. And if you read in the next pages over here, you'll understand why. They said, you cannot give up this land because they're going to fire rockets and artillery into your population centers. That was their rather objective, non-guilt-ridden assessment. Okay, so I'm going to sum up. The first big issue is understanding that Israel is not something that is just good for the Jews. Israel is vital for the national security of the United States of America, and you now have a 5x8 postcard where if you have a Greek friend or an Italian friend, or really, quite frankly, even an Arab friend, if you read my things, you'll see it is actually protecting the Arabs against killing each other in a God only knows what type of war. So now you have a relatively simple way to explain to someone why Israel is not just something that is an American Jewish issue, but something that is an American Western civilization issue. And you also now have a sort of a better understanding, working understanding of what President Trump is proposing. And I'm going to leave you with one final thing. You should be saying to yourself, oh, this guy, he seems like a very nice boy chick up there. Who is listening to this guy, right? Okay. First of all, and where does he come up with these maps? What is going on here? Okay, everybody, I'm not doing anything particularly new or novel. Why? Because if you look at the back page of the booklet I made, everyone, just like we said, you know, Israel was not in existence in 1941. I think we will all agree that the internet, nor computers, or Wikipedia was in existence in 1581. Okay, is that a fair, is everybody with me on that? Okay. However, despite not having any of those wonderful informational graphics tools, there was a map maker called Bunting, and he made a map. And his map basically explained what I just showed you, which is that Israel is at the crossroads of all of these continents and civilizations, meaning Israel stands between Asia and Europe, Asia and Africa, and the key is if you control the node, you control what is going on. So that sort of gives you like a big picture thing. But now I want to read something to you that I can guarantee you you have not read about in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, or any Jewish newspaper, which is scary and sad, which is there has been developing under the radar, unfortunately, an American understanding of the importance of Israel, Greece, and Cyprus as really the southeastern defense of NATO. And there was a bill that was just passed, which was signed into law by President Trump, and it was a bipartisan bill because, believe it or not, the biggest caucus in the Congress is the Hellenic/Greek caucus. So if that caucus understands how vital Israel is, then we're really in a world of goodness, okay? And that bill passed, and it said the Eastern Mediterranean Security and Energy Partnership was included in the legislative package. The legislation is a comprehensive recalibration of American military and economic policy towards the Eastern Mediterranean and a strong and prosperous alliance between the United States, Greece, Israel, and Cyprus. So, thank goodness, what I'm showing you is actually seeping into our system, hopefully. And with that, I will defer to the rabbi, and thank you, everybody, and God bless you all.